You're praised for being strong, for keeping it together, for never breaking down. But deep inside, you're tired, exhausted, because strength has become your prison. You smile, but it never reaches your eyes. You speak, but your voice doesn't sound like yours anymore. You think you're protecting yourself. But what if all you've done is silence the only part of you that could heal? This isn't strength. This is survival. And survival isn't living. Let me tell you about Lauren. From the outside, she seemed composed, kind, even admired at work. She handled pressure well. She listened more than she spoke. And when a colleague once said, half-jokingly, "You're too soft for leadership," she smiled and said nothing. But that night, she couldn't sleep. Her chest tightened, her thoughts spun. Why did that sentence haunt her? Why, of all things, did that moment sting so deeply? It wasn't just the words. It was where they landed. The remark touched a scar she didn't even know was still bleeding. That's the first truth no one tells you. It's not what they say, it's where it hits. And it hits deepest when you've buried the wound. See, Lauren had spent years building an identity that looked strong, helpful, polite, professional. But beneath it lived an old belief, inherited, unnamed. I'm not enough unless I prove myself. So any word, any silence that echoed that old fear shattered her. And she wasn't alone. We've all experienced it. Someone says something that barely scratches the surface for others. But for you, it feels like a knife. Why? Because you've spent years avoiding the real pain. You've armored yourself with being nice, competent, likable. You've patched over your insecurities with performance. But the unconscious doesn't forget. It waits. It hides. And it reacts, even when you think you've moved on. Carl Jung warned us. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is not about weakness. It's about clarity. Until you recognize what still hurts in you, you'll continue to bleed every time someone brushes against it. So here's the real question. What if the thing you fear being hurt by is not the person in front of you, but the part of you you've never dared to look at? And what if facing that part honestly, bravely, is the beginning of true strength? Let me introduce you to a man named Jason. He's the kind of person others call dependable, measured, responsible. A man who built his entire life around calm, not because he was at peace, but because he couldn't afford to fall apart. Jason always thought he had life under control. A structured calendar, measured words, logical decisions. He didn't raise his voice, didn't show anger, didn't cry. He believed that if he could control his reactions, his world would stay intact. He believed composure was protection. But one evening, after dinner, his wife of 9 years looked him in the eye and said, "I don't think you really see me. I feel alone in this marriage." And then she left, just like that. No screaming, no betrayal, only silence and the collapse of the world he had built so carefully. Jason was left stunned, not by the loss itself, but by his complete inability to stop it. That was his first awakening. He didn't lose control. He lost the illusion that he ever had it, and that illusion had cost him everything. You see, when you build your life around control, controlling how others see you, how they treat you, how situations unfold, you chain yourself to outcomes you can never guarantee. You become a prisoner in your own castle. Jason had confused calm with suppression. He wasn't unshaken, he was shut down. He thought that if he didn't express pain, pain couldn't reach him. But pain had been growing in the silence. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." Jason resisted conflict. He resisted vulnerability. And all of it persisted quietly, patiently, until it exploded. It's a hard truth. The more you try to control the outside world, the more enslaved you become by it. Because deep down, what you're really trying to control is how people affect you. You think, if I'm kind enough, smart enough, steady enough, no one will hurt me. But that's bargaining, not healing. True freedom doesn't come from predicting the next storm. It comes from knowing you'll stand firm when it hits. Jason began to realize that control had never been strength. It had been fear wearing a suit. And when he finally let himself feel the rage, the grief, the guilt, he didn't fall apart. He finally came together. That's what no one tells you. When you stop protecting yourself from pain, you stop being ruled by it. Now, let me introduce you to a woman named Lauren. She's composed, thoughtful, the kind of person who never yells, never complains, never causes a scene. She's the emotional anchor in every group, or at least that's what everyone sees. But inside, something else is quietly unraveling. Lauren always thought she was emotionally intelligent. She read the right books, practiced empathy, avoided drama. People called her calm, mature, even balanced. But one morning, her partner made an offhand comment. "You're overreacting again." That was it. Not cruel, not loud. Just a line tossed into a conversation. And something in her cracked open. Her hands shook. Her voice rose. She stormed out of the room, heart pounding, unable to explain what had just happened. Later, she sat in her car, stunned. Why did I react like that? What's wrong with me? That's when the fear crept in. Not fear of others, fear of herself. That is what happens when the unconscious speaks and you're not ready to hear it. Carl Jung didn't see the unconscious as a vague cloud of feelings. He saw it as a living system full of memories, patterns, desires, and wounds you've never dared to face. And here's the part no one tells you. The unconscious never sleeps. You can bury it, ignore it, wrap it in smiles and self-help quotes, but it will always find a way to surface. Lauren wasn't reacting to the words. She was reacting to a deeper wound. Years of being labeled too emotional, dismissed in childhood, invalidated by people who made her doubt her own feelings. That one sentence, "You're overreacting," touched a nerve wire decades ago. And in that moment, she didn't see her partner. She saw her father. She saw the teachers. She saw every face that once made her silence herself to be accepted. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And Lauren, like so many of us, had been calling it fate. I'm just sensitive. I always mess up relationships. I don't know why I act like this. But these aren't flaws. They're unprocessed signals. They're the unconscious trying to wake you up. Because when you don't deal with what's buried, you end up tripping over it again and again. Lauren thought she was healed because she wasn't crying anymore. But pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through your reactions. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes. Jason didn't cry when she left. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not for weeks. He went to work, paid bills, folded the laundry. From the outside, he looked the same. But something inside had gone hollow. There were moments at traffic lights, in empty rooms, where his chest would tighten and he'd feel nothing. Just a dull weight pressing down. So when a close friend gently suggested therapy, Jason hesitated. "I'm fine," he said. "I just need time." But deep down, even he didn't believe it anymore. Eventually, he walked into a quiet office and sat across from someone who didn't ask him to explain right away. She simply said, "When was the last time you felt everything?" Jason stared at the floor. Minutes passed. And then tears. No drama, no collapse. Just tears, as if something ancient had been waiting for permission to surface. That was the turning point. Not the breakdown, but the breakthrough. You see, Jason had spent his entire life running from pain, because like most of us, he was taught it's dangerous. That pain makes you weak. That real men don't cry. That emotions are something to fix, manage, control. But Carl Jung saw pain differently. He said, "Depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, don't send her away. Invite her in, offer." Jason had never listened. He had silenced, suppressed, outperformed. He had armored up so thoroughly that even he forgot what was underneath. But now, the armor had cracked, and what he found inside wasn't weakness. It was grief. Unspoken, unprocessed. Not just for his marriage, but for the boy who never felt safe to feel. This is what no one tells you. Pain isn't the enemy. Rejection isn't what destroys you. It's your refusal to feel that keeps you trapped. Because pain isn't just suffering. It's signal. It's the soul's way of pulling the emergency brake. And when you stop running, when you actually sit with it, you begin to hear something beneath the noise. Truth. Jason didn't need to get stronger. He needed to stop fighting what was already true inside him. And that is when the real strength began. Lauren didn't change overnight. There was no dramatic breakthrough, just a quiet, stubborn decision. I need to understand what's really going on inside me. She started small. Every time something triggered her, a tone, a comment, a sudden wave of sadness, she wrote it down, not to fix it, not to judge it, just to notice. After a few weeks, the patterns began to appear. The same words that stung, the same moments that tightened her chest, the same situations that made her feel like a child again, invisible, dismissed, not enough. She realized something important. She wasn't crazy. She was wounded. And wounds, when ignored, don't vanish. They repeat. In conversations, in relationships, in self-sabotage disguised as just how I am. One night, after another long scroll through her notes, Lauren paused. She looked at a page where she had written, "Why does it hurt when people don't listen?" Below it, she had scribbled, "Because I still think I have to earn the right to be heard." That line stayed with her, because it wasn't about the people around her. It was about the story within her. A belief formed long ago, never questioned, always obeyed. This was integration in motion. Carl Jung called this process individuation, not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. Not fixing yourself, but reclaiming every part of you that was lost, silenced, or shamed. Lauren began to understand. You don't become unshakable by hiding your pain. You become unshakable by embracing what's already inside you fully, without resistance. When she stopped trying to seem okay, she started to actually feel okay. She didn't have to prove she was strong anymore, because now her strength came from truth, not performance. She no longer flinched at silence, no longer panicked when someone misunderstood her. She had seen the echoes of her past and stopped letting them run the show. And that's what no one teaches you. Real armor is not what you wear on the outside. It's what you've accepted on the inside. You stop being reactive. You become observant. You stop needing to be right. You start being real. Lauren hadn't become invincible. She had become whole. And in that wholeness, she found a peace that no one could give her and no one could take away. Jason didn't make a big announcement. He didn't burn bridges or cut people off. He just stopped showing up to the weekly dinners that drained him, to the conversations that never went deeper than sports, weather, or career moves, to the friendships built on obligation not connection. At first, people noticed. Some called. Some didn't. A few asked, "Everything okay?" He answered politely, but inside, something had shifted. Jason had spent most of his adult life surrounded by noise, social expectations, professional masks, family roles. He was always playing a part, even if he didn't realize it. But after his world fell apart, the performance no longer felt sustainable, so he stopped acting. And the silence that followed, it was deafening and healing. This was the lonely part of transformation no one warns you about. Carl Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, beneath the layers of persona, performance, and protective roles. But individuation isn't glamorous. It's not Instagram quotes and meditation apps. It's grief, letting go, sitting in emptiness. It's realizing you've outgrown people you still love. Not because they're bad, but because you're no longer pretending. Jason used to think maturity was about being composed in a crisis. Now he saw it differently. True maturity is knowing when to walk away quietly, because your soul is growing in a direction others may not follow. He wasn't angry. He wasn't above anyone. But he had finally stopped needing to belong everywhere. And that brought its own kind of loneliness. Not because he was isolated, but because few people were ready to meet him at the depth he had reached. But in that depth, he found something he never had before: clarity. Not just about others, but about himself. What he valued, what he could no longer fake, what he was finally willing to lose, in order to live honestly. This is the painful paradox of becoming whole. You grow quieter, but more alive. You feel lonelier, but more connected to yourself. And you stop asking others to complete you, because now you're no longer split inside. Jason hadn't lost people. He had lost his dependency on them for identity. And that was the beginning of real freedom. Months had passed. Lauren was no longer journaling out of desperation, but curiosity. She had mapped her patterns, challenged old beliefs, and started responding to life with more clarity than ever before. Then came the test. She ran into someone from her past, someone whose words had once reduced her to tears. He didn't mean to hurt her, but he had. Repeatedly, through passive digs, subtle dismissals, and the kind of charm that always made her second-guess her own feelings. This time, they met by chance. A cafe, a short line, a polite, "Oh, hey." Small talk followed. And then, the same old tone, the same dismissive smile. But something was different. Lauren didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. She didn't perform. She listened. She noticed. She breathed. And most of all, she observed. What she saw was no longer a threat. What she heard no longer echoed inside her. Because this time, there was nothing left for his words to stick to. She wasn't numb. She wasn't guarded. She was clear. You see, when you integrate your wounds, when you bring the shadows into light, the same old triggers lose their grip. Lauren had spent years being tossed around by external energy. Now, she had become a center-rooted, aware, whole. She didn't need to argue, didn't need to defend. She simply smiled, not the polite, tense smile she used to wear, but one that said, "I see you, but I no longer lose myself to you." That moment didn't look powerful, but it was seismic. Because power, real power, often whispers. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't seek control. It just is. Carl Jung once wrote, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Lauren hadn't escaped her past. She had integrated it. She had turned inward again and again until the echoes grew quiet. That's what no one teaches you. You don't need to fight to be free. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. And in that cafe, under fluorescent lights, surrounded by noise, caffeine, and forced politeness, Lauren found something rare. Silence. Not emptiness, but peace. And for the first time in her life, she didn't need to be untouched by others. Because now, nothing could reach what she had already accepted. There's a myth we've all believed at some point, that to be safe, we must be strong. That the world stops hurting us when we're untouchable. But life doesn't work that way. You will be misunderstood. You will be criticized. You will face loss, silence, rejection. That is not the threat. The real threat is not knowing why those things hurt you. The real threat is living on autopilot, reacting without clarity, feeling without understanding, breaking without knowing where the cracks began. This is what Carl Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Jason learned this after months of silence. Lauren lived it in that cafe. And if you've come this far, you're probably beginning to feel it too. Your power is not in how much you can withstand. It's in how deeply you understand yourself. Clarity is the shield no one can take from you. When you know where your triggers live, you stop walking through life like a landmine. You stop assigning blame to everyone who steps on the pain you've never claimed. When you understand the voice of your fear, you don't silence it, you listen to it. You guide it. You hold it. And then it stops controlling you. This is not perfection. You'll still get hurt. You'll still feel sad, or angry, or lost at times. But you won't drown in those emotions anymore, because you'll know where the surface is. Because you'll have built a place within yourself that no one else can invade. That's consciousness. And that is your real protection. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of awareness. It's not about staying calm all the time, it's about knowing what to do when you're not. Imagine this. A storm rolls in. Winds rise. People scatter. But you walk steadily, not because the storm is weak, but because you know who you are within it. That's what consciousness gives you. Not immunity from life, but the ability to live fully without being ruled by fear. And once you touch that space, that steady place inside you, nothing outside of you will ever have the same power again. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Let's look back not just at Jason and Lauren, but at everything they represent. Jason didn't just lose a relationship. He lost the illusion that composure was the same as peace. He learned that silence isn't strength if it's built on suppression. That real stability begins the moment you let the storm move through you, instead of holding it in. Lauren didn't just react to an old sentence. She reacted to years of unspoken rules she had absorbed. Don't feel too much. Don't make people uncomfortable. Be easy to love. She started seeing those rules for what they were. Survival strategies, not truths. Together, their stories echo a truth we all share. You are not weak for being affected. You are only vulnerable when you don't understand why. That is the shift. Not to stop feeling, but to start feeling clearly. Jason used to think his worth came from holding everything together. Now he finds power in letting go of control, of image, of roles he no longer fits. Lauren used to think she had to be understood to feel safe. Now she realizes, I don't need you to see me clearly. I just need to stop hiding from myself. And maybe that's your turning point too. Maybe you've spent years building emotional armor, hiding your fear under humor, covering your shame with competence, dismissing your loneliness by staying busy. And maybe none of that ever really worked. Maybe all it did was delay the one thing that could actually change your life. Facing what you've buried, listening to what you've silenced, becoming whole, not perfect. Because Once you begin that journey, the journey of integration, you stop living as a reaction. You start living as a response to your truth. This isn't a destination. You will fall again. You will feel pain again. But now, you'll meet that pain with awareness, not fear. And that changes everything. You'll begin to notice that the people who once triggered you no longer do. That the silence that once suffocated you now feels peaceful. That the life that once overwhelmed you now feels like yours. Not because it got easier, but because you got real. And in that realness, in that wholeness, you become someone the world can no longer break. You were taught that strength means silence, that the less you feel, the safer you are, that showing emotion is giving power away. But now, you know better, because the pain didn't break you, it revealed you. It showed you the part of yourself that still needed to be seen, held, understood. And now you've met that part, not with shame, but with presence. You're no longer pretending to be unshakable. You are unshakable not because nothing affects you, but because you know what lives inside you. That's what no one told you. The strongest people are not those who never bleed. They're the ones who stop hiding their wounds. You don't need to defend yourself from life anymore. You just need to be fully in it. You've stopped living in fear of pain, because now you know pain is not the enemy. Disconnection is. And when you are no longer disconnected from yourself, no loss, no silence, no rejection can truly dismantle you. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a new way of walking through the world. A way where your center is no longer outside of you, in praise, in control, in approval, but within. And that inner clarity, that's your true protection. So if this video touched something in you, if a part of you woke up and whispered, "Yes, that's what I've been feeling all along," then don't stop here. Leave a comment below and say, "I choose awareness." Not for me, but for you. Because saying it out loud is a way of saying, "I'm ready." Ready to stop surviving by pretending to be strong. Ready to start living with truth. Ready to become whole. And if that's the path you're on, then you're not alone. We're walking this together. Don't forget to subscribe. The next video will take you even deeper. And you're ready now. More than you think.